Hello from Geneva, I'm Tian Wei. Welcome to Trade and Our Shared Future, a World Insight special featuring up-to-date insights and up-to-task discussions about trade and our lives. I'm standing in front of the World Trade Organization headquarters in Geneva for the WTO Public Forum this year. It opens on Tuesday with the theme Re-globalization, Better Trade for a Better World. Over the past 30 years, world trade has surged, worth over $30 trillion in 2023. It has enriched and changed all our lives. Yet trade growth is hardly inclusive, with some left behind. Barriers such as geopolitics, tariffs, technology gaps are threats to the world trading system. How can we best cope with persistent challenges? How can development be better incorporated into global trade? Zhang Xiangchen, Deputy Director General of WTO, having a conversation with him in the WTO library in Geneva, which is already 100 years old, gave the conversation an extra sense of history. Our conversation starts from what the WTO Public Forum can do for better trade and better world. I've never imagined there will be opportunity for me to sit in this beautiful library of the WTO and have a talk with you face to face.
You know, Tianwei, this building, this year is the 100th anniversary. So we would like to celebrate the anniversary of this building. And this library is the best place in the whole building.
There are three major topics for WTO Public Forum 2024. Green, service trade, and also digitalization. So how do you see these three topics are relevant to our trade today?
According to our understanding, trade can connect production and consumption. And in the futures trade, the digital, the green trade, and inclusive trade can play a very important role, and which can help the members, especially the developing members, to achieve the sustainable development.
On the fisheries subsidies, I understand there is quite some difficulties. So how would you articulate to the public why during the ministerial meeting there's already quite some consensus, but still cannot be done?
The fisheries subsidy negotiation is not only related to trade. It's not a typical WTO negotiation. It's about environment. It's about, you know, the people's concern of the climate, the blue economy. WTO had a lot of experts on trade, but it's not necessary for us. We have the expertise on fishery. But as a global challenge, WTO would like to make its own contribution. If we can achieve the agreement on such fishery subsidy, we can save the ocean. That's the reason why we have the aspiration to finalize this negotiation. I think the main difficulty is about the special and differential treatment.
Right.
How to help those less developed countries to reserve some policy space. At the same time, they can also join the international coordination to protect the ocean.
When you say give them some space to join, what is the kind of space that you would describe to us?
You know, according to the WTO negotiations, we have so-called special and differential treatment. Mainly refers to a longer implementation period, some flexibilities to implement the agreement. I think those requests are legitimate, but how to define the special and differential treatment and how to allocate those special and different treatment is a difficult issue. But in this regard, I think China has done its utmost. In Abu Dhabi, the Chinese delegation made an announcement to opt out the special and different treatment in the fishery subsidy negotiations. I think China set a good example that those developing members who are in the position to give up their own flexibility and reserve the right for the most less developed countries.
On the investment agreement, we understand that many of the developing countries are already signing on. So what are the obstacles right now?
Let's look back a little bit at the history of this negotiation, investment facilitation for development. I was proud that I was one of the co-fathers of this initiative.
Congratulations.
In 2017, when I served as the ambassador of China to the WTO. At that time, we just had a dozen members, like Kazakhstan, Colombia, Brazil, but now we have 126 members. Most of them are developing countries, and the LDCs, the least developed countries, is a huge development. And of course, they're still one step away from the final destination. But I think the proponents are trying to persuade the remaining members who are reluctant to join the agreement to catch up with the trend, because the investment facilitation for development agreement will benefit all the developing countries. Although we don't know when we can achieve the final destination, but I'm confident that if we continue to open this process to all the members, finally no one will be left behind.
Plurilateral has been quite a good way to work within the WTO, given the constraints of have to have everybody to sign on in order to make it a final agreement. So how is this way of working applied to the two issues that you just mentioned?
Plurilateral is a kind of approach which is legitimate in the WTO framework. When members have different on some issues, especially the new issues, which would allow some like-minded members to try to explore first, and then give the room for others to wait, to think. If they assume the time is mature, they can join later. So that's the merit of the plurilateral agreement. I think if we can achieve agreement on investment facilitation for development and bring it to the WTO's legal framework, is a great achievement.
Now, we understand that South-South trade has already exceeded the amount of South-North trade. How much significance do you see in this latest development? And what does that say to the procedures, the way of discussion, the goals of WTO?
You are right that South-South trade is playing more important role in the global trade. That's for sure. At the same time, we have to recognize, the African trade only covers 3% of the global trade. If we look at the trade of LDC, the least developed countries, it's only about 1%. So there's still a huge gap between the developing countries, especially LDC and other WTO members. So our objective is to help the developing countries, which covers more than 2/3 of the WTO membership, to catch up and to be better integrated into the global economy.
When you are talking about WTO helping the developing members, there are also those who question about the credibility of WTO. We heard that rhetorically over and over again, particularly in the past 6 to 8 years. Now, as DDG of WTO, how do you see the ardent task you need to have, as you said, to serve particularly the developing nations?
Actually, in the past several decades, many developing countries benefit a lot from the integration to the multilateral trading system, including China. And other countries like Vietnam, Kazakhstan, Costa Rica, they all benefit a lot. But it's not the case for some other countries, especially those developing countries in Africa. So that's the reason why we have to pay special attention to those vulnerable members to help them to catch up with the development of technology and other aspects, especially the digital trade and digitalization. In order to help them to catch up with this digital transformation, we work together with World Bank to select 10 pilot countries on the digital trade for Africa, to help them to improve their regulatory framework to help those developing countries to embrace the digital trade.
How better will the voice of the so-called Global South be heard here at WTO? What does the rise of what some call the Global South mean for WTO as an organization?
In WTO, we have developed countries and developing countries, yes. And there are different informal groups for developing countries. For example, we have the IGDC, informal group of developing countries. We have the GULAC. The GULAC is the regional group for the Latin American developing countries. We have the Asia developing country groups. We also have the LDC group, AP African groups. Mm-hmm. But I think the most important thing is to synergize, right. The different groups' position and to take advantage of the platform of the WTO to send their voice in a more concrete, a more professional manner, and then to participate the negotiation in a positive manner, and then to explain their position in a clear way, and to bargain in the negotiation tables for their interest. And I assume that for the developing countries, they have both offensive interest and defensive interest. But if we only focus on the defensive interest, it's difficult for us to have a balanced outcome in the WTO.
Deputy Director General Zhang Xiangchen of WTO is very busy this week together with his colleagues at the headquarters, working for the ongoing 2024 WTO Public Forum. He has long and extensive experience on WTO issues, international negotiations, and policy research, with a long career of more than 30 years in international trade. One could tell his passion about trade, hearing him talking about an important task of the WTO, development through trade. So how would you articulate the current stage of development in WTO compared to earlier times? Looking at some of the sacred goals you just mentioned, Mr. DDG, how far are we from there?
We are celebrating the 30th anniversary of the Marrakesh Agreement. Mm-hmm. The Marrakesh is the place that we established the WTO, and when the GATT members signed the agreement to establish the WTO, it's already the peak of the multilateral trading system. From then, the multilateral trading system encountered a lot of difficulty. We stepped down a little bit because the turbulence of the globalization. It's understandable because the allocation of the benefit of globalization is uneven in the developed countries and even between the developing countries and the developed ones. That's the reason why the WTO is still in a difficult time. But I think the most important thing is that for all WTO members, for all people who care about the multilateral trading system, should keep true to the original aspiration of Marrakesh Agreement.
What is the original aspiration of Marrakesh Agreement?
In the preamble of the Marrakesh Agreement, it stipulated clearly our objective is to achieve sustainable development. And in this process, trade can play an important role. If we forget about this, we cannot reach the success of the WTO reform.
I understand there are certain members within WTO that is hindering the process, but for the others at WTO, how are you discussing this issue on a daily basis? What can the rest do, according to your information?
More than 100 members call for the resumption of the Abu Dhabi. And in Abu Dhabi, there is an agreement among members that by the end of this year, members would like to try to resume the full function of the dispute settlement system in the WTO. Let's keep our fingers crossed for this outcome. But I would like to clarify that the pillar of dispute settlement in the WTO is still there, is still operating. For example, the first layer, the dispute settlement by panels, is still working. Yeah. And many members accept the outcome of the resolution of the panels. And besides the appellate body, there's the MPIA, the interim mechanism for the disputes resolution among some like-minded members like China, like Japan, like Korea, European Union, Australia, Canada. So WTO is still functioning to some extent on the dispute settlement mechanism. But of course, we would like to see a full-fledged dispute settlement mechanism in the future.
What are the steps that need to be taken in order to get there, procedural-wise?
Not everybody understands what you're doing, this building. I think the communication between the WTO experts and the business, academic, media is very necessary for the WTO reform. We need to break the ivory tower and break the silos and to keep this WTO reform process open to the international community.
The other thing you talk about is the green issue. There are certain issues of trade conflicts and the global supply chain and value chain problems regarding the green issue. How do you see these difficulties? What does that mean to the green process WTO aspire to achieve?
We assume that this global challenge of climate change can only be addressed by the global solution. In order to help the members to deal with this global challenge, WTO has done some homework. For example, we made research on the carbon pricing mechanism. Like some other international organizations, IMF, OECD, World Bank, they have their own research on this. Our intention is not to provide something for the negotiation for the WTO members. We just want to stimulate the discussion among members. Because we assume if the members sit down to look at the facts, the data, maybe they can have some new idea to talk to each other and finally to find some mutual acceptable solution for the trade relationship with the environment.
How will these impact the overall atmosphere of discussion in the WTO about the green development? And how will this provide some experiences and takeaways for WTO to think about when it comes to your future goals to develop green?
WTO has already participated in the COP28 and 29. And in the COP29, for the first time, we organized a trade day. And this, the event for climate change and environment. And the purpose of this event is to encourage the experts of climate change to pay attention to trade and trade aspects. And in the WTO, we organize several aspects discussion which are related to climate change and green trade. For example, plastic pollution and fossil subsidy issues, and also the structure issues on environment. However, we need a more structured discussion on environment and climate change. We organized the task force for trade and climate change, which attract a lot of attention of the members. We hope, in light of this, the global collaboration on mitigation of climate change, WTO can be part of this global initiative.
What do you see is the best approach for you to do your work? How do you see you and Madam Director General and all your other colleagues are working and united together in order to face up to some of the biggest challenging time of WTO?
The role of the representative of a home country and the DDG is different.
Certainly.
But there's some similarities. For example, I have two hats. Both hats assume multilateral trading system is important for my country and for the rest of the world. And my role in the past is to defend my country's position, but now as a DDG of WTO, my role is to help the developing countries, the least developed countries, to be integrated into the system. So I can borrow some experience in the past I experienced and to communicate with those developing countries, as I mentioned, to look at not only the defensive position but also the offensive interest in the multilateral trading system. And I think I like my job, and I think I can do different things for those vulnerable group of countries in the WTO.
How do you see your colleagues, especially you and those with the Secretariat, are trying to help these developing countries, least developing economies, on a daily basis, in an incremental way to grow?
We have to recognize there's the digital divide between the least developed country and other WTO members. And there's also the asymmetry of understanding of the digital economy between the LDC and other members. So our role is to help them to narrow the gap and to help them to understand the importance of this strategy to catch up with this technology development. Although they have a lot of difficulties, but the most important thing is to broaden your mind, to recognize there's the strategic interests, strategic opportunities. And we organize hundreds, thousands of webinars, workshops for those developing countries to help them to realize there are a lot of opportunities, although we have also a lot of challenges. But despite the challenges, we need to focus on opportunities. Otherwise, you will be left behind. And for the digital transformation, if you will be left behind, you have no opportunity to catch up in the future.
How do you see these very exciting and yet very distracting sometimes events going on in the world? How do you make sure you will stick to WTO's goal without being distracted by all of these important events going on every day?
I think that the theme of the public forum is important. It's about re-globalization. And this is a slogan we invented for calling all the members to pay attention of the beneficial allocation to more developing countries. Right. In the last round of globalization, not all the developing countries benefit from it, but now we see a lot of challenge. At the same time, there's also the opportunities. So the theme of the public forum is better world for better trade for a better world. So we would like to see, the developing country can participate actively, positively in the global economy and to try to get benefit from it. So despite all the challenges, all the tensions, we would like to focus on that.
Mr. DDG, what a pleasure to see you. Thank you so much for sharing your time with us.
Thank you.